Welcome back to Building on a Budget models for the third part of our 1962 Shelby Cobra 289 build by Revell. I used a toothpick to hold the steering column carefully and then painted it in gloss black. I had already painted the undercarriage in semi-gloss black and the engine surround in aluminium. I then added the leaf spring suspension, which was done in semi-gloss black as well. The shock absorbers were done in gloss red and they had small triangular decals. I then did the rest of the suspension parts in semi-gloss black. These were quite fiddly. I found that there weren't as many pins and holes in these parts as I would have liked. The disc brakes were aluminium, semi-gloss black, and I chose to do the calipers in gloss red. These parts all have a hole going through the middle for the metal wheel axle, which had to be threaded quite carefully. I had to use super glue here because otherwise they just wouldn't have stayed in place. There were no pins for them. I tried using aluminium acrylic on the chrome wheels to dull down the spokes, but it just didn't stand out well enough, so I chose to use the unchromed parts instead. I gave them a spray in some silver project enamel from Plasticoat, and then did the spokes in the Revell iron paint. The wheels were made up of two parts, and if I was building this again, I think I probably would have glued them before painting and given them the maximum amount of time to set before putting them into the tyres, as later when I tried putting them onto the axles, a couple of them came apart. There's a small amount of flash on the tyres, but mostly they're good, and the wheels fit into them quite nicely. All four tyres are the same size, so there's no problem with putting them at the front or the back. I found that the hole wasn't big enough for them to fit onto the axle, so I used my micro drill to widen the holes ever so slightly. However, once they went on, the hole was ever so slightly too wide and they fell off, therefore I had to use a little bit of super glue. Be careful not to glue them to the brake discs, because then the wheels will no longer spin. I chose to use the chrome spinner for the centre to add contrast to the rest of the wheel, and I think it turned out quite nicely. I used this reference picture from the back of the box to tell me where the engine parts should go. I started by painting the battery details before gluing that in. And then moved on to the radiator. A small fan went in front of the radiator. I found my small scale tweezers from Dave Coley's Emporium very useful when putting the engine together. I used some Tamiya panel line accents to give a little bit of depth to the radiator, as well as dirtying up the wheels ever so slightly. I added the small logo decals to the battery and radiator. It required quite a bit of fine threading of parts through the front suspension to get the pipes from the engine to the radiator. Look very closely at your instructions before putting this into place. There are places for the engine to fit, but it was a little bit awkward. I test fitted the rear axle to make sure that the metal pole would fit through before gluing it together. It was in a mixture of aluminium and gloss black. The drive shaft needed to meet up with the transmission, so I widened the hole in the transmission ever so slightly using my micro drill, and then added the exhaust and some small decals to the other parts of the drivetrain. Remember that links and descriptions of the tools and materials which I use can be found in the description below the video. The tabs at the end of the leaf spring are used to fit the disc brakes into place, so make sure that you don't cut them too close, as this will make adding the disc brakes very awkward. Painted them in the same three colours as I had done before. The instructions wanted the calipers to be gold, but I chose to do them in red as I thought they would stand out a little better. Unfortunately, this set doesn't come with decals for the tyres, even though on the box you can see that the Goodyear lettering is put in white. The tyres themselves have raised Goodyear lettering, and they are moulded quite nicely. I compared them to some aftermarket Goodyear decals that I had bought, but unfortunately they weren't the right size and I thought that they would look poor. Therefore I chose to go a different route, as I'll show you later. Just like at the front, the brake discs didn't fit very well at the bottom, and therefore superglue was used in order to keep it into place. Just like with the front wheels, I needed to enlarge the holes before they fit onto the axles, but if you're careful you can still make them roll like this. I then added the chrome spinners just as I had done at the front. These look very similar on the front and the back, so make sure that you get them the right way, ever so slightly pointing outwards from the wheel. Here you can see that the chassis is completed, and I'm quite happy with where it is. I test fitted the body on top of it and it fits. However, I still needed to do those tyre decals. I sharpened a toothpick to a very fine point and then used some Revell light grey acrylic to mark out the decals as shown here. I also had with me a pointed pair of tweezers to scratch off any excess. It's important to use acrylic as it dries quickly and can be scratched off if you make any mistakes. I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. Let me know in the comments what you think. And then the final one was completed as well. And here is the final chassis. Next time I will be doing the interior and then finally moving on to the exterior and putting it all together. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Please comment, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.